Chapter 11. The golden afternoon sun bathed the castle gardens in a warm, ethereal glow, as though the heavens themselves were smiling down upon this sacred moment. A gentle breeze stirred the petals of vibrant blooms, their sweet fragrance drifting through the air like whispered blessings. The gardens, usually serene, now held the hush of reverence, every leaf, every flower seeming to pause in stillness, honoring what was to come. Guests stood gathered, not merely nobles or warriors, but kindred spirits, family and dear friends, souls who had walked beside Tilly and Aster through chaos and triumph. They were bound to the couple not by duty, but by love. Among them stood the revered sorcerer Valorian, silent yet ever watchful. The three wise mages observed with the quiet gravity of those who understood the weight of destiny. And Isara, the kind-hearted mage who had once soothed Tilly's fears, now stood ready to preside over their enchanted matrimony. Soft harp music floated on the breeze, notes delicate and timeless, as if plucked from the heartstrings of the realm itself. Then, through the hush of anticipation, she appeared. Tilly stepped into the garden, radiant beyond words. She wore a gown of otherworldly beauty, the fabric flowing like liquid starlight. Intricate embroidery shimmered with each movement, as if the very threads were spun from morning dew and dreams. The bodice, adorned with delicate silver filigree, honored the traditions of Etherwin, elegance, grace, and unwavering strength woven into every stitch. Her cheeks were kissed with the gentlest blush, her eyes reflecting the sky above, bright, infinite, full of hope. She moved forward slowly, reverently, her gaze fixed on the one who waited for her. Aster stood near the altar, dressed in ceremonial finery, his usual strength softened by joy, his expression a mixture of awe and quiet devotion. His eyes never left hers. And though no words were yet spoken, the magic of the moment said everything. They had chosen each other. In a world torn by uncertainty, they had found something sacred. Love. And there, waiting for her, was Aster. He stood tall beneath the garden's canopy of gold-touched leaves, dressed in a regal tunic of pristine white. Silver threads traced elegant patterns across the fabric, shimmering like the crest of a rippling river beneath the sun. He looked every bit the knight he was, his posture proud, his bearing noble. But his eyes, oh his eyes, held none of the hardened fire of battle. Instead, they shimmered with something far more powerful. Love. As Tilly approached, their gazes locked, and time itself seemed to halt. The world hushed in reverence. For her, it was as though she had waited across lifetimes for this exact moment, for the man who now stood before her, steady and unwavering, as if he had been carved from the dreams of her soul. Aster, who had stared down danger without flinching, felt his breath catch in his chest. The sight of her, his bride, radiant and breathtaking, struck him deeper than any sword ever could. The war, the kingdom, the burdens of duty, all of it faded. All that remained was this, a love that reached beyond time, beyond fate. A love that was theirs. They met at the altar, fingers weaving together instinctively, hearts already entwined. The energy between them was palpable, soft yet strong, fragile yet infinite. Isara stepped forward, her voice warm and kind, carrying over the gathered witnesses like a gentle breeze. Here's the blushing bride and the proud groom now, she said with a smile. Let us begin the ceremony. Tilly laughed softly, her cheeks tinged pink, and Aster answered her joy with a playful wink. They turned to face Isara, hands still clasped, faces alight with quiet wonder. It was fate, Isara began, lifting her hands with reverence, that first wove the threads of destiny, intertwining hearts and guiding souls toward one another. From fate's endless weave, we learn the meaning of love, the force that binds all things, stronger than time. deeper than the stars. The garden seemed to lean in, listening. It is from this love that we understand a truth, that a life walked alone is no true life at all. And so, we gather here today, beneath fate's eternal gaze, to witness the sacred union of two souls, bound not only by affection, but by destiny itself. Her voice grew softer, more solemn. May their journey be blessed in light and shadow, in joy and sorrow, in triumph and in trial. May their hearts beat as one, unwavering through the winds of change, through the tides of time, and beyond the veil of this life into the next. Isara's eyes sparkled with magic and memory as she asked the final question, her words carrying the weight of eternity. Do you vow to be bound together in love, now and forever? I do, Tilly whispered, her voice radiant with love. Now and forever. Aster, his eyes never leaving hers, echoed the words with a quiet certainty that shook the air. And I do. Now and forever. A hush fell over the garden. The moment was crystalline, fragile, and shining. Isara stepped forward, her hands raised with quiet authority, the silken sleeves of her ceremonial robes billowing with the breeze. Witnesses, she proclaimed, her voice ringing out clear as bells. Bear witness as I perform the sacred enchantment matrimony, binding Princess Tilly and Aster in a union that shall endure beyond time itself. All eyes turned to her as she continued, the weight of ancient magic swirling around her words. Through ancient spells and unwavering devotion, I shall weave a binding enchantment upon their heirlooms, Tilly's treasured amulet, a legacy of her royal lineage, and Aster's warrior's necklace, a symbol of his strength and honor. She extended her hands toward the couple, where the heirlooms now hovered gently in the air between them. These enchanted tokens shall serve as a testament to their love. Should either betray the sanctity of this bond, the magic will awaken, glowing crimson to reveal unfaithfulness. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. But Isara continued, her gaze warm and unwavering. If their love remains steadfast and true, the enchantment shall lie dormant, and their tokens shall remain unchanged, forever bound in the purity of their devotion. With a final flourish of her fingers, she whispered an incantation. A low, melodic hum rose around them as shimmering threads of magic spiraled from her hands. The air rippled with light. The tendrils of enchantment twisted through the air like golden vines, wrapping gently around the amulet and the warrior's necklace. The heirlooms pulsed softly with life, their glow steady and harmonious, resonating with the spell's power. Gasps turned to awe as the guests beheld the wonder unfolding. The very atmosphere seemed to shimmer with divinity. A celestial note rang through the gardens, a sound not quite music, not quite wind, but something deeply true. It was as if fate itself had exhaled. Slowly, the magical glow dimmed, sinking into the heirlooms, which now rested against their wearers' hearts, forever altered, forever sacred. A round of quiet applause and reverent murmurs stirred through the crowd, an undercurrent of emotion that swelled like sunlight through the trees. The enchantment is complete, Isara said softly, a smile curving her lips. Now, you may speak your vows. Aster took Tilly's hands gently in his, the sun catching the glint of the newly enchanted heirloom resting against his chest. The hush that fell across the gathered guests was reverent, as though nature itself had paused to listen. His voice was calm but rich with emotion. Tilly, he began, eyes locked to hers. From the moment our fates intertwined, you have been the light that guided me through every storm, the star that shone even in the darkest of nights. A breeze stirred the silken hem of her gown, but she didn't move. Her breath caught, heart aching with the weight of his love. I have walked many paths, he continued, faced battles seen and unseen, yet no force in this world has ever been as powerful as the love I hold for you. The strength in his tone faltered just slightly, enough to reveal the tender core beneath the night steel. You are my dearest friend, he said softly. My greatest adventure. And the reason my heart beats with purpose. Emotion rippled through the garden like the quiet hum of magic still lingering in the air. I vow to stand beside you through the trials of fate, through the joys of triumph and the shadows of sorrow. His fingers squeezed hers gently, reverently. Before these witnesses and the gods above, I swear to honor you, cherish you, and forever hold you in my heart as the most precious treasure of my soul. Tears welled in Tilly's eyes, but she didn't look away, not for a second. You are the most kind-hearted person I know, Aster said, his voice now thick with pride and awe. You will rule this kingdom with compassion and resilience. I believe that with all my heart. And I vow, he added, his voice dropping to a solemn murmur, to protect you and our future children with my life. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Through every sunrise and every twilight in this life and the next, he whispered, my love for you shall never waver. He leaned forward slightly, his forehead nearly brushing hers. You are my forever, my Tilly, and today, I pledge myself to you. Tilly choked back a sob, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. Her shoulders trembled, not from sorrow, but from overwhelming joy. Aster blushed faintly, the bold words having taken all his courage. Yet he never looked away from her, never broke the sacred connection between them. Time itself held its breath. Tilly's hands trembled slightly in Aster's, not from fear, but from the overwhelming tide of love swelling in her chest. Tears shimmered on her lashes, her voice soft but steady as she began. Aster, she whispered, from the moment we met, you have always been my anchor, the warmth in my coldest nights, the quiet strength in my most uncertain days. A hush fell again over the garden as her words, like poetry spun from devotion, floated through the golden air. Through every twist of fate, she said, her gaze never leaving his, every battle fought, and every secret uncovered, you have stood beside me, unwavering and true. Her voice wavered with emotion, but she pressed on, her heart wide open. I have never known a love as boundless, as fierce, and as breathtaking as the love I hold for you. She glanced briefly at the enchanted amulet nestled against her heart, a legacy of her lineage, now a symbol of something deeper. Her vows, like threads of silk, wove themselves into the stillness. Before these witnesses, she said, voice rising just slightly, under the watchful eyes of the gods and the whispers of the wind, I vow to cherish you, to honor you, and to forever stand by your side. A small laugh escaped her lips then, wet with tears but tinged with tenderness. At first, she admitted, I thought you would be my mere crush, a fleeting dream of the heart. But time and fate have shown me otherwise. She reached up to gently brush her fingers against his cheek. You have always proven to be the bravest, the kindest, the one who feels like home to me. Her lip trembled as she drew a breath. And now I know with certainty, she said, voice clear and sure, I want you by my side forever. To build a future. To raise children who will inherit both your courage and your heart. A murmur of emotion passed through the crowd behind them. I have eyes for no one else but you, Aster. It just feels right with you. She smiled through her tears. And when I learned that you felt the same way, my heart knew there was no greater joy. Her hand closed over his. Her voice grew soft again, but no less fierce. You have risked your life for me, time and time again. And today I vow to do the same for you. In this life and beyond, through every challenge and every victory, my heart, my soul, and my love belong to you. And with a final breath, firm and unwavering, she said the words that sealed her vow. Now and forever. Isara's voice rang out, strong and radiant beneath the open sky, echoing with the weight of ancient tradition and timeless magic. With the power bestowed upon me as a wise mage of Etherwyn, she proclaimed, her hands lifted gracefully toward the heavens, and before the sacred eyes of fate, I now pronounce you husband and wife. A hush swept over the crowd, the air holding its breath as if the world itself were listening. Bound not only by love, Isara continued, her voice carrying like a hymn, but by the eternal enchantment of your souls. She lowered her hands slowly, her gaze warm and full of pride. From this moment forth, your hearts beat as one, your fates entwined by destiny's hand. May your union stand unwavering through the trials of time, strengthened by love, trust, and the magic that binds you. A pause followed, reverent, eternal. You are now bound forever. The applause began as a ripple and surged like a wave, joyous and pure. Isara smiled as she clapped, her expression full of blessing. Aster turned to his bride, his eyes alight with emotion as he gently drew her close. The cheers of their loved ones faded to a distant hum as he swept her into his arms, dipping her low with care and confidence. Tilly's arms wrapped around his neck as their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and triumphant. Around them, a shimmering swirl of light descended like stardust, an echo of the enchantment just spoken. It shimmered and danced in the air, a final divine blessing that sealed their eternal bond. The air vibrated with ancient magic, humming with the pulse of fate itself. And when the final spark faded into the sunlight, joy erupted in full among the guests. The garden rang with applause, laughter, and wonder, as their princess and her beloved knight stood entwined, now and forevermore. The golden light of the afternoon sun poured across the royal gardens, soft and warm, as though the sky itself was blessing the newlyweds with its gentle gaze. The sounds of laughter and celebration drifted from behind them, but Tilly and Aster had quietly slipped away, hand in hand, their footsteps light with the joy of everything they had just vowed to one another. They wandered slowly along the winding garden paths, hearts still beating with the rhythm of magic and devotion. Around them, the scent of blooming roses and wildflowers hung in the air like a whispered blessing, sweet and intoxicating. Leaves rustled in the breeze above, their soft murmurs weaving through the branches like secrets shared only between lovers. Far from curious eyes, they found shelter beneath a delicate canopy of ivy and blossoms. Here, time seemed to slow once more. Without a word, Aster pulled Tilly into his arms. The embrace was gentle but certain, as though the very fabric of the universe had folded itself around them to keep them in this perfect moment. She leaned into him instinctively, her arms circling his waist, her cheek brushing the linen of his ceremonial tunic. When their eyes met, the world fell into hush. Aster gazed at her as if seeing her for the first time, and the thousandth all at once. His eyes, full of quiet awe and unwavering devotion, traveled across the lines of her face, memorizing every detail. He looked at her not as a knight looking at a princess, but as a man looking at the one person he would follow through fire and storm. And Tilly, with her breath caught halfway to a whisper, saw not just the warrior who had fought for her, but the home she had always longed for. A love that had not only survived battles and burdens, but had grown stronger because of them. In that sacred hush between heartbeats, no words were spoken. They weren't needed. Their hands clasped tightly, fingers threaded with the promise of forever. Their foreheads tilted toward one another, close enough to feel each other's breath. And in that closeness lived a silent vow, a knowing that no matter what shadows lay ahead, neither of them would ever walk alone again. The sky deepened into hues of violet and rose, and somewhere in the castle beyond the laughter and music, soft candlelight began to bloom. Inside the grand chambers of the royal suite, shadows danced upon silk-draped walls, cast by the gentle flicker of 100 flames. Their light wrapped the room in gold, turning the world quiet and sacred. In the hush of Tilly's chamber, love spoke not in words, but in the language of glances held just a heartbeat too long, in the invisible thread that pulled two souls ever closer. Aster stepped toward her, drawn as if by gravity itself. Tilly met him halfway, her breath trembling, her eyes searching his as if trying to memorize every truth he held. There were no declarations needed, only presence. Only the certainty that this was where they were meant to be. Their lips met, soft as a sigh, slow as sunrise, and yet charged with all the intensity of the love they had carried through every battle and vow. A kiss that deepened like the pull of tide to moon, growing fiercer, more desperate, until neither could tell where one ended and the other began. Fingers traced lines down familiar spines, relearning the shape of devotion and the heat of desire. Every touch was reverent, every breath caught between them like a prayer whispered in secret. Their bodies pressed together as if to chase away all the nights they had spent apart, all the fears and doubts that had tried to steal this moment from them. And then, beneath the soft, golden glow of enchanted candlelight, they made love. It was not rushed nor reckless. It was something ancient and wild, something holy, a sacred act spun of magic and heart, of trust and vulnerability. In their union, every kiss was a vow, every sigh a promise that their souls would never again walk alone. For Tilly, it felt as though the stars had broken free from the heavens and fallen onto her skin, igniting a fire that warmed her from the inside out. Aster's touch was at once fierce and gentle, like fire tempered by moonlight. With every movement, every whispered name against her skin, he carved devotion into her very soul. She had never felt more cherished, more seen, cradled in his arms. She felt like the beating heart of the universe. And for Aster, to love Tilly in this way was to touch the divine. She was magic incarnate, the promise of dawn after endless night, the bloom of life after winter's hush. Every sigh that left her lips was sacred, every shiver a spell that bound him to her more completely than any ceremony could. In her, he found not just desire, but purpose. Not just passion, but home. Their love moved like a current beneath the surface, gentle at first, then overwhelming, pulling them deeper into something vaster than either had ever known. It was more than passion, more than longing. It was the feeling of something ancient awakening between them, something eternal. Aster's fingertips wandered across Tilly's skin with reverence, tracing constellations as if her body held the map to the heavens. Each touch was deliberate, worshipful, as though he feared she might vanish with the morning. And Tilly, her eyes soft with wonder, gave herself to the moment without hesitation. She etched forever into him with her every breath, her every whisper, her every trembling kiss. Their hearts beat in harmony, speaking a language older than the stars, an unspoken melody born from the very fabric of existence. It was the song of the moon, the hush of wind through ancient trees, the hush between the crashing of waves. In each other, they found their beginning and their end. The fire that ignited them and the calm that steadied them. The storm that tested and the shelter that healed. With each breath, each movement, they unraveled and reassembled, surrendering to the unshakable truth that they were no longer separate things, but one. As the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains in soft, silken threads, the world returned in quiet fragments. The air was still, the castle hushed, and time, for a precious moment, held its breath. They lay entwined beneath the weight of their shared vow, the warmth of their union still glowing between them. Neither spoke. There was no need. In the steady rhythm of each other's breathing, in the way their fingers remained gently laced, everything that mattered had already been said. They were not a princess and a knight, not a ruler and her protector. They were simply Tilly and Aster, two souls at last home. Chapter 12. It had only been a few days since Aster and Tilly's private wedding, a sacred ceremony hidden from the eyes of the world. Within the hallowed halls of Etherwyn, they had pledged themselves to one another beneath the watchful gaze of fate, sealed by the ancient rite of enchantment matrimony. Their love had been bound not only by word and will, but by magic, an eternal vow that shimmered like starlight across their very souls. But peace, as always, was fragile. That night, beneath a cloak of twilight and scattered stars, the serenity of the royal capital trembled. Before the household could fully retreat to their chambers, a swift clatter of hooves and the echo of iron boots shattered the stillness. The guards of Etherwyn returned to the castle with urgent news that darkened the corridors like a sudden eclipse. A small battalion of soldiers had arrived at the gates, bearing the crest of Duskmoor. Their message was simple, stark, uncompromising. Return, sage, or face war. The fires of celebration had not yet cooled, and already the threat of bloodshed loomed. The royal parlor, though gilded in tapestries and bathed in the soft glow of morning light, felt unbearably dim. Tension hung thick in the air, a heavy silence threaded with dread. It coiled in the corners like mist and settled deep into the bones of every soul present. Tilly stood near the hearth, arms crossed tightly over her chest, though it did little to still the tremble in her fingers. Her breath came shallow, uncertain. Beside her, Astor's jaw clenched with quiet unease. His stance was guarded, uneasy, as though his very instincts were bracing for impact. Across the room, within the deeper shadows of the chamber, the queen nervously toyed with the delicate embroidery of her gown. Her expression was pained, her eyes flickering between her daughter and the guarded doors beyond. The king stood resolute, arms folded across his chest. His face was carved from granite, cold, unreadable, but the fire behind his gaze betrayed him. Fury simmered there, unspoken yet volatile, like embers ready to erupt into flame. And Sage stood alone. Frozen in place, she barely breathed. Her arms crossed tight, chin lifted in defiance, but the truth writhed beneath her skin. Dread twisted inside her like thorned vines wrapping around her heart. She had always known this day might come, but knowing did little to soften its sting. Outside the chamber, guards waited in grim silence, their armor catching glints of light like warning sparks. Servants lingered along the walls, heads bowed and lips whispering behind trembling hands. Fear passed through them like a ripple. The weight of a kingdom balanced on a knife's edge, Sage's fate, the fragile peace of Etherwyn, and the looming threat of a war that could consume them all. And then, a movement. A shadow stirred. No one noticed her at first. A servant, or so it seemed. Her head bowed, posture unthreatening, easily overlooked in a room where royalty stood tense and nobles whispered. But then, with a sudden and practiced fluidity, she moved. A blade flashed in her hand, sleek, silver, and deadly. In one swift motion, she hurled the sword through the air, its path aimed directly for Tilly. Gasps tore through the chamber as the weapon spun, catching the torchlight in a blinding gleam. Time slowed. Heart stopped. The woman who had once passed as a humble servant let out a high, chilling cackle, a sound far too wild, too feral for any ordinary spy. Her disguise began to unravel not with fabric, but with fangs. She threw back her head, her lips parting in a twisted smile that revealed elongated canines, gleaming and monstrous. Not human. Vampiric. And above it all, her voice sliced through the air, thick with venom and betrayal. Death to Princess Tilly of Etherwyn. Tilly froze, terror locking her limbs as the spinning blade cut through the air. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. A vampire, Astor shouted, voice raw with alarm as he recognized the assassin for what she truly was. There was no hesitation in him, not even for a heartbeat. Astor surged forward with the force of a storm, his sword drawn mid-run, his eyes only on Tilly. In a flash, he crossed the space between them and threw himself in front of her, arms wide, body braced. The sound that followed was a sickening thud, metal slicing through flesh and bone. The blade struck right into Astor's chest. His body jerked with the impact before crumpling to the ground, motionless, like a knight fallen in battle before his time. Tilly screamed, a sound ripped straight from the depths of her soul, as she dropped to her knees beside him. Across the room, the vampire, no longer masked by false humility, stood calmly, her voice cold and void of empathy. "Come now, Princess Sage of Duskmoor," she said, turning to the girl frozen in place. "Let's get out of here." Sage's expression twisted in fury. Her hands clenched into trembling fists as she glared at the creature, her eyes burning with disbelief and rage. A storm rose within Sage. It began as a tremble in her hands, a vibration beneath her skin. But swiftly, it surged into something vast and uncontainable. Her eyes glowed with fury, and the very air around her crackled with untamed energy. Magic, wild and ancient, erupted at her fingertips, power she had never dared to summon before, now breaking free like a dam shattered by rage. The temperature in the room dropped, then spiked with heat. The spy, the vampire cloaked in the guise of a servant, met her gaze with a twisted smirk, unrepentant. But it was too late. Sage's scream was silent, her fury channeled instead into a devastating burst of magic. Flames erupted from her outstretched hands, a torrent of searing fire that devoured the assassin in an instant. The spy's shriek echoed through the chamber, sharp and full of agony, before it was swallowed by the inferno. Flesh turned to ember, bone to dust, and in the blink of an eye she was gone. Ash drifted to the floor like snow in the aftermath. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Sage stood unmoving, breathless, as the last threads of magic hissed into the air. Her power still pulsed in the quiet, trembling through the walls and echoing across the marble floor. The enemy was no more, but the damage had already been done. Time fractured. The grand royal parlor, once filled with murmurs and movement, now stood eerily still. All sounds seemed to drain from the world, except for one. A scream. It tore from Tilly's throat like a soul breaking loose, sharp and ragged, echoing against the high ceilings like a curse. Her hands reached blindly, finding Astor where he lay crumpled on the cold marble floor, his chest pierced by the traitor's blade. "No. No. Astor, please," she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. She collapsed beside him, her trembling hands brushing through his hair, tracing the lines of his beloved face. "Please wake up," she whispered over and over, her tears falling freely now, dotting the blood-stained fabric of his tunic. But there was no response. No groan. No shift in breath. Just the terrible stillness of a knight who had given everything for her. Tilly clutched his body against her, her sobs raw, her heart fractured beyond repair. Around her, the world remained frozen in stunned silence. But inside her, everything was screaming. Desperation surged through Tilly's veins, sharp and overwhelming, more potent than any fear she'd ever known. Her hands hovered over Astor's chest, and without thought, only raw need, magic awakened within her. A golden light pulsed from her palms, the sacred gift of Etherwind's royal bloodline. It shimmered softly at first, a healing glow meant to mend wounds and restore life. She poured her soul into it. Silent prayers fell from her lips, trembling like leaves in a storm. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Please, Astor, come back." The glow intensified, enveloping them both in radiant warmth. But it did not last. The light flickered, then dimmed. The sword remained lodged in his chest. And Astor, did not move. A strangled sob escaped her. Her magic, Etherwind's most sacred gift, had failed her. No. Her voice cracked as fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. "Somebody help him," she screamed, her voice echoing through the halls, desperate and helpless. She collapsed against him, her cries turning to agonized sobs as she held his lifeless body close. The hope she had clung to slipped like sand through her fingers. Across the room, Sage's eyes filled with fury and sorrow. Her trembling hands clasped together as she stepped forward, summoning something far more ancient than healing magic, something wild and forbidden. The raw power of her bloodline surged within her, a primal force begging to be unleashed. Violet energy crackled at her fingertips, twisting through the air like ghostly tendrils. The scent of burning embers filled the parlor as her magic ignited, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Murmured incantations tumbled from her lips, sharp and swift, drawn from every spell she'd ever studied, every secret she'd dared to learn. The magic spiraled toward Aster, wrapping his broken form in a cloak of energy, searching, reaching, pleading, to reclaim him from the brink. But would it be enough? The violet light that once danced with promise now flickered, then vanished entirely. Nothing. Silence pressed down like a shroud. Aster remained still, his body sprawled across the cold marble floor. His golden hair was soaked in crimson, the blood pooling beneath him like a morbid halo. His chest still. No breath. No life. Sage knelt beside Tilly, her expression twisted in helpless grief. Her voice trembled. "Tilly, I'm so sorry. He's gone." The words didn't just break Tilly, they obliterated her. They pierced deeper than any blade, deeper than the cursed dagger lodged in Aster's heart. Her lungs refused to draw breath. Her soul fractured in an instant, the world collapsing around her like shattered glass. And still, Aster didn't stir. Darkness. No light. No sound. Only the thunderous ache in her chest, a grief so consuming it stripped away the meaning of reality. Aster. Her night. Her love. Her heart. Gone.